Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never imagined they could betray you, not just a little, but in a way that changes how you see your entire family forever? Because that kind of betrayal doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors. It creeps in quietly, wearing the face of love, and by the time you realize what's happened, the damage is already done. And what I did after discovering that betrayal, well, let's just say it split my family straight down the middle. I want you to picture this. Years of careful saving. Skipped vacations. Secondhand furniture. Saying no when friends said yes. Not because I was miserable, but because I had a goal. Security. Independence. Peace of mind. I worked for everything I had. Nothing was handed to me. And I trusted one person with that truth more than anyone else. My mother. My name is Illiana Brooks, and for most of my life, I believed my mom was my safe place. Growing up, our house revolved around my younger sister. She was the baby. The sensitive one. The one who needed more. If she cried, the world stopped. If I struggled, I was told I was strong enough to handle it. And for a long time, I wore that like a badge of honor. I became the responsible one. The reliable one. The one who didn't ask for much. When I started working in my early 20s, I made a decision. I was going to save aggressively. Not just for emergencies, but for my future. A down payment. A cushion. Freedom. My mom encouraged it, or at least that's what I thought. She offered to help me manage the savings, said she knew about accounts and interest and long-term planning. I trusted her. She was my mother. Why wouldn't I? I deposited my savings into an account she had access to. Not joint ownership, but access. Just in case, she said. If something happens to you, I need to be able to help. It sounded reasonable. Loving, even. And over the years, that account grew. Slowly. Steadily. Every time I checked, it made me feel proud. Safe. Then my sister got engaged. From the moment the ring appeared, everything shifted. Suddenly it wasn't just a wedding. It was an event. A production. Venues. Dresses. Guest lists that felt longer than a census report. My mom was glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. She threw herself into planning like this wedding was the crowning achievement of her life. At first, I was happy for my sister. Truly. But I noticed things. Expensive things. The kind of things that don't come cheap. I heard numbers being tossed around casually that made my stomach tighten. When I asked how they were affording it all, my mom brushed it off. "We'll manage," she said. "Don't worry about it." I didn't. At least, not right away. The moment everything changed was small. Almost insignificant on the surface. I went to transfer some money from my savings to cover a work-related move. Something I'd planned for months. I logged in, and froze. The balance was wrong. Not off by a little. Not a delay. It was significantly lower. Tens of thousands lower. I refreshed the screen. Logged out. Logged back in. Same number. My hand started shaking. I checked transaction history, heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. And there it was. Multiple withdrawals. Large ones. Spread out over months. All authorized. By my mother. I sat there in silence for a long time. Not crying. Not yelling. Just staring. Trying to make it make sense. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe there was an explanation. There had to be. I called her. She answered cheerfully, like nothing in the world was wrong. I asked her about the withdrawals, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause. A long one. Then she sighed. "I was going to tell you," she said. "It was for your sister's wedding." Just like that. No warning. No permission. No apology. I remember gripping the phone so hard my knuckles hurt. "You took my savings?" I asked. "She needed it," my mom replied. "This wedding is important. You'll get it back eventually." Eventually. That word echoed in my head like a slap. I told her that money was mine. That I'd worked for it. That I had plans. She got defensive. Said I was being selfish. Said family helps family. Said my sister deserved a beautiful day. "What about me?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer that. When I hung up, something inside me broke clean in half. Not just trust. Identity. I realized that in my family, I was never the one who needed protecting. I was the one who was expected to sacrifice. Always. I didn't confront my sister right away. I needed time. Time to think. To process. To decide what kind of person I was going to be next. Because here's the thing. I could have screamed. I could have threatened legal action. I could have cut them off completely. And for a moment, all of that felt tempting. But then another idea formed. One that didn't involve yelling. One that didn't involve begging. One that would make them truly understand what they'd done. People think revenge is about anger. For me, it was about balance. I didn't want to destroy my family. I wanted the truth to surface in a way they couldn't ignore. I wanted consequences. Real ones. So I stayed quiet. I acted normal. I smiled through dress fittings and menu tastings. I listened as my mom bragged about centerpieces and live music, all paid for with money she thought I wouldn't dare challenge. And while they planned the most extravagant day of my sister's life, I planned something of my own. Something that would arrive at the exact moment they least expected it. Something that would turn celebration into chaos. After that phone call, I didn't sleep. Not because I was crying, but because my mind wouldn't slow down. Every memory I'd ever filed away as, "That's just how our family is," came rushing back with a new meaning. Every time I'd been told to be understanding. Every time my needs were postponed. Every time I was praised for being low maintenance. It all lined up too perfectly to ignore. By morning, I wasn't confused anymore. I was clear. I checked the account again, slowly this time, line by line. The withdrawals weren't accidental. They were intentional, timed carefully, taken in chunks small enough that I wouldn't notice right away. A venue deposit here. A dress payment there. Catering. Flowers. A band. My savings had quietly become the wedding fund. And the worst part wasn't even the money. It was the assumption. The assumption that I wouldn't object. That I'd understand. That I'd swallow it like I always did. I called the bank that afternoon. I didn't accuse. I didn't panic. I asked questions. Calm ones. What kind of access did my mother have? What authorizations were on file? What options did I have? Moving forward? The woman on the phone was polite, professional, and very clear. What had been done was technically legal, because I had allowed access. But that didn't mean I was powerless. I opened a new account that same day and transferred what little remained. I removed access. Quietly. No announcements. No drama. And then I sat back and watched. The wedding planning ramped up fast. My mom was in her element, basking in attention, telling anyone who would listen how hard she'd worked to give her youngest the wedding she deserved. My sister floated through it all, excited and blissfully unaware of where the money had come from. Or maybe she suspected and chose not to ask. I'll never know. People asked me if I was excited. I smiled and said of course. I helped when asked. I showed up. I played my part so well that no one suspected a thing. But behind the scenes, I was documenting everything. Every conversation. Every expense mentioned out loud. Every bragging comment about how we spared no expense. I saved messages, emails, receipts that were accidentally forwarded to me. I didn't interrupt. I didn't challenge. I let them build the illusion higher and higher. Because the higher it rose, the harder it would fall. About 3 weeks before the wedding, my mom called me in a panic. The florist needed final payment. The band wanted confirmation. She sounded stressed, irritated, overwhelmed. I might need a little more help, she said. There it was. How much? I asked. She hesitated, then named a number that made my stomach turn. A number that would have wiped out what little savings I had left if I'd still allowed access. I can't, I said calmly. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then disbelief. Then anger. What do you mean you can't? She snapped. This is your sister's wedding. And you already took my savings, I replied. All of it. She tried guilt. Then logic. Then authority. She told me I was tearing the family apart. That I was selfish. That I'd regret this. I let her talk. Then I said something that stopped her cold. You should plan with the money you have, I said. Not the money you assumed I'd never ask about. She hung up on me. The next few days were tense. My sister called, confused, upset. She said Mom was stressed, said this wedding was falling apart, said she didn't understand why I was suddenly being so difficult. I told her the truth. Calmly. Every detail. She cried. She said she didn't know. She said Mom told her the money was saved for family. She asked me why I didn't stop it sooner. I trusted her, I said. Just like you did. That conversation changed things. Not in a dramatic, movie-style way. But in a quiet, uncomfortable one. My sister was forced to see a version of our mother she'd never had to face. And my mother was furious that the truth had leaked before she was ready to control the narrative. But I wasn't done. Because stopping the money flow wasn't the payback. It was just the beginning. What I did next didn't involve yelling, lawsuits, or revenge fantasies. It involved timing. Precision. And one public moment where pretending would no longer be possible. By the time the wedding week arrived, the tension was so thick you could feel it in every room. Smiles were forced. Conversations were clipped. My mom barely looked at me unless she had to, and when she did, there was something sharp behind her eyes, like I'd betrayed her instead of the other way around. My sister tried to keep the peace, bless her heart, but the damage was already done. The truth has a way of changing the temperature of a family, even when no one wants to talk about it out loud. I stayed calm. That was the part that bothered my mother the most. I didn't argue anymore. I didn't defend myself. I just observed. I listened. And I waited. The wedding was scheduled at a beautiful venue, the kind with sweeping lawns and chandeliers that glitter like they're trying to distract you from how much everything costs. As I walked in the day before for the rehearsal, I could practically see my money everywhere. In the flowers. In the chairs. In the elaborate setup that screamed excess. It took effort not to let my anger show, but I reminded myself why I was here. Not to explode. To expose. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous, but because I was focused. Every step of what I'd planned needed to happen exactly as intended. Timing mattered. Tone mattered. I wasn't interested in being painted as the bitter sister. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. The morning of the wedding, my mom was frantic. Running around. Barking orders. Complaining about last-minute costs. At one point, she cornered me in a hallway and hissed that I was ruining everything. I looked at her calmly and said, "No. I'm just not hiding it anymore." She stormed off. The ceremony itself was beautiful. I'll give them that. My sister looked radiant. The guests were emotional. Music swelled. Applause filled the air. And for a moment, I almost wondered if I should let it go. If maybe peace was worth swallowing one last injustice. Then I remembered the account balance. The nights I'd gone without. The trust that was taken without asking. So when the reception began, I stood by the edge of the room and waited for my moment. You see, I wasn't just a guest. I was scheduled to give a toast. My mom had insisted on it weeks earlier. "It'll mean so much," she'd said. "You're her sister." I'd smiled and agreed, already knowing exactly what I'd say. When my name was called, I walked to the microphone slowly. Calmly. The room quieted. Faces turned toward me. My mother smiled tightly, already bracing herself, I think, but still confident I wouldn't dare. I started gently. I spoke about family. About love. About sacrifice. I thanked everyone for being there. I praised my sister sincerely, because none of this was her fault. You could feel the room relax, nod along. Then I shifted. I talked about how weddings are built on support. On the unseen contributions people make behind the scenes. I talked about how important it is to acknowledge where help comes from. I paused. Just long enough. Then I said it. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge something very personal," I said, my voice steady. "This wedding was funded in part by years of savings I worked for and entrusted to my mother, savings that were taken without my knowledge or consent." You could have heard a pin drop. My mom's face drained of color. My sister's eyes widened. Guests shifted uncomfortably. No yelling. No dramatics. Just truth, spoken clearly. "I didn't realize my money was gone until I needed it," I continued. "And when I asked about it, I was told it was for family. That I'd understand. I want everyone here to know that family support should never come from secrecy or entitlement." Gasps. Murmurs. Someone dropped a fork. "I'm sharing this not to ruin a day," I said, "but to make sure no one else here ever feels pressured to sacrifice silently, or told their needs matter less." I ended by congratulating my sister again and stepping away from the microphone. The chaos didn't explode immediately. It simmered. People whispered. Questions flew. My mom stood frozen, humiliated, exposed in front of everyone she'd been boasting to for months. The image she'd crafted cracked wide open. I walked outside and took a deep breath, my hands shaking for the first time that day. Not from fear. From release. What happened next, the confrontations, the fallout, and the decision I made that truly changed my life, is something I still think about to this day. The moment I stepped outside, the music behind me sounded muffled, like it was happening in another world. I stood there under the open sky, breathing in slowly, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that settles into your bones when you finally stop carrying a weight that was never yours. It didn't take long before the doors burst open. My mother came out first. Her face was tight, eyes blazing, lipstick slightly smeared like she'd been clenching her jaw too hard. She didn't yell right away. That surprised me. Instead, she hissed my name like it was a curse. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded. On her wedding day? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of disappointing her. "You did this to yourself," I said calmly. "I just stopped protecting you from the truth." She accused me of being jealous. Bitter. Vindictive. She said I humiliated her in front of the entire family, that people would never look at her the same way again. "They shouldn't," I replied. "Because what you did wasn't okay." That's when my sister came out. Her makeup was flawless, but her eyes were red. She looked between us, confusion and heartbreak written all over her face. "Is it true?" she asked my mother quietly. "Did you take her savings?" My mom tried to speak, then stopped. Tried again. Finally, she said, "It was for you." For your day. My sister's shoulders sagged. You told me it was taken care of. You never said it was hers. I didn't think it mattered, my mom said. And the moment the words left her mouth, I saw my sister flinch. Because in that sentence, she heard what I'd been hearing my entire life. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The truth was doing the work for me now. The rest of the evening unraveled quickly. Conversations stopped when my mom walked by. Aunts pulled my sister aside. Uncles whispered. People who had praised my mother's generosity just hours earlier were now looking at her with discomfort, even judgment. And for once, I wasn't the uncomfortable one. Later that night, my sister found me alone in a quiet hallway. She took off her heels and sat beside me on the floor like we were kids again. I didn't know, she said softly. I swear I didn't. I believe you, I said. And I meant it. She started crying then. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just quiet tears. She told me she felt guilty. That she didn't know how to enjoy the day anymore. That she felt like her happiness had been built on my loss. That wasn't your choice, I told her. But what happens next, that is. She nodded slowly. My mother didn't speak to me for weeks after that. When she finally did, it wasn't to apologize. It was to demand I fix things. To tell people it was a misunderstanding. To help her save face. And that's when I realized something else. She was still more concerned with how she looked than what she'd done. I refused. I didn't post online. I didn't gossip. I didn't chase sympathy. I simply told the truth when asked, and I stopped pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. And in doing so, I did something that terrified me at first. I stepped out of my old role. No more being the strong one who absorbs everything. No more being the silent fixer. No more sacrificing my stability so others could shine. The financial fallout wasn't easy. I had to rebuild from scratch. Adjust plans. Delay dreams. But the strange thing was, I felt lighter doing it honestly than I ever had pretending. Months passed. My sister and I slowly found our way back to each other, this time on equal footing. She apologized again, and this time it wasn't out of confusion, but understanding. She made changes. Real ones. Boundaries. Conversations. Accountability. My mother, well, she changed too. But not the way I expected. She became quieter. More guarded. People stopped praising her sacrifices so freely. And for the first time, she had to sit with the consequences of being seen clearly. She never fully admitted she was wrong. But she stopped asking for access. Stopped assuming. Stopped taking. And that, in its own way, was a shift. What I learned through all of this is something I wish I'd understood earlier in life. Standing up for yourself doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks lonely. Sometimes it costs you comfort. Sometimes it makes people angry who benefited from your silence. But it also gives you something priceless. Yourself. By the time everything settled, the chaos I'd caused didn't look the way people imagine chaos. There were no screaming matches anymore. No dramatic confrontations. No explosive family meetings. What remained was quieter, heavier, and far more honest. The kind of aftermath that forces people to sit with themselves. For a long time, I thought my payback was that toast. The shock. The public exposure. Watching my mother's carefully crafted image crack in front of everyone she tried so hard to impress. And yes, I won't lie to you, there was a part of me that felt vindicated in that moment. After years of being overlooked, it felt powerful to finally be seen. But that wasn't the real payback. The real payback came later, in the weeks and months after, when I realized how much I'd changed. I stopped explaining myself. When relatives called and awkwardly asked what happened, I told the truth without embellishment and without apology. When some of them hinted that I should let it go for the sake of family, I calmly told them that family shouldn't require silence in exchange for belonging. Some understood. Some didn't. And for the first time in my life, I was okay with that. I rebuilt my savings slowly. It wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration, moments when I felt angry all over again thinking about how much further along I could have been. But something unexpected happened. Every dollar I saved this time felt stronger. Cleaner. Fully mine. No shared access. No blurred boundaries. No guilt attached. My relationship with my sister became something entirely new. We had long conversations we'd never had before. Honest ones. Painful ones. She admitted she'd always known, on some level, that I was expected to give more and ask for less. She told me she'd mistaken that for strength, not realizing the cost. We learned how to be sisters instead of roles assigned by someone else. And my mother, well, she never gave me the apology people think is necessary for closure. She never sat me down and said, "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." What she did instead was adjust. She stopped asking questions about my finances. Stopped assuming she had a say. Stopped volunteering my time or resources to others. It wasn't dramatic growth, but it was a boundary she no longer crossed. Distance grew between us, but it was a healthy distance. The kind that allows you to breathe. One afternoon, months later, I caught myself smiling over something small. I realized I hadn't thought about the wedding, or the money, or the betrayal in days. And that's when it hit me. My savage payback didn't leave my family in chaos forever. It left me free. Free from the version of myself that believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. Free from the belief that being the strong one meant being the expendable one. Free from protecting people who never protected me. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the reliable one, the quiet one, the one expected to give without question, I want you to hear this clearly. Being kind doesn't mean being available for exploitation. Being family doesn't mean forfeiting your future. And standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel, no matter how uncomfortable it makes others feel. The moment I stopped absorbing the damage quietly, everything changed. And if my story does anything, I hope it reminds you that it's never too late to choose yourself. Even if it shakes the room. Even if it upsets the balance. Even if it causes chaos before it creates peace. If you like this story, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I truly love reading and connecting with you.